We know that Clefbaum is out for the year, Ken. What is your plan of attack going to be with the taxi squad early on? Do you want your young guys there, or how do you balance NHL ready or young guys for those four to six spots?
Great question, Jason. I mean, we're working through that right now. I'm on a American Hockey League. I think a lot depends on, right now the American League's tentatively planning on playing February the 5th. So obviously we open on January the 13th. Certainly there's 3 weeks there where there's no games in the American League. The only games in the National Hockey League. So, I'm on a task force that we're going to meet tomorrow. And I know here over the next couple of weeks, I think that the American League will iron out everything, their start dates and everything that's going on. So I would say to you that early on the taxi squad, obviously has to be a goalie, one goalie for sure. Do we have two goalies or do we have one goalie? And then, maybe a couple of players and certainly some extra forwards. So I anticipate that we'll be carrying, a full complement of a 23-man roster. And then I would anticipate that we'd have 6 players on our taxi squad.
Are you able to bring guys off and on the taxi squad, or once they're down in the American League, will the quarantine factor come into play?
There's always a quarantine all year long. There's a quarantine. So certainly if we were to say, let's say you've got a young player on the taxi squad and you now get into April and he's been on the taxi squad for 2 months and hasn't had an opportunity to play at all or play sparingly. At some point in time, we're going to need to get, whether it's a young player, any player, you're going to have to play games. So I think depending on how active, depending on how many injuries we get, depending how many players on our taxi squad get used, if we've got to use them all, that's one story. But if we have good luck with health and you don't, there's players on the taxi squad that aren't used at some point in time, we'll probably want to send players off the taxi squad down to play in the American League and recall somebody. Certainly you got to be aware of the quarantine regulations. And we'll have that all mapped out. But we're going into uncharted waters here, so we got to kind of figure it out on the fly. But I don't know that I want to keep somebody in the taxi squad for, from January 13th until May the 8th, and they never play a game. At some point in time, they're going to have to go down and play some games to shake the rust off.
Great. Next question from Reed Wilkins, 630 Chad. Go ahead, Reed.
Thanks, Sean. I'll ask a couple here. Merry Christmas to you and Ken. Ken, in past availabilities, you did reference some talks with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and his agent about trying to extend something. Now the season's right around the corner. I wonder if there's an update there or if something might be coming down the pipe.
On Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, his agent, Rick Follett and I had many conversations the 2 weeks, the 2 weeks right around October the 9th, which obviously was unrestricted free agency, the couple of weeks prior and the week after. And, I think that the marketplace is so, it's changed so much that basically our conversations have ended, and I would hope that at some point in time here, once we get up and running, we can pick up and see if we can find a solution. I think I've said to you, and I've said to Rick Follett, my hope is to find a solution to keep Nugent and Oiler uniforms. Certainly that's my goal, but the deal's got to work for Ryan, and the deal's got to work for the Oilers.
And Ken, my other question would be, it's going to be likely a pretty condensed schedule. Maybe you're playing a lot of back-to-back, 6 games in 10 days, things like that. And obviously the same opponents over and over again, which sometimes can build rivalries and animosity and physicality and things like that. Looking at your roster, how confident are you in its ability to sort of grind, and play in games with animosity and play games where there's maybe not a lot of rest in between?
I think, Reed, I think part of that, the answer to that question is some of that is in makeup. in terms of, and some of that is in players digging in and understanding that's the way that's got to be played. And, I think, obviously I reflect back on my time in Detroit, and the first, the last few years wasn't in terms of playoffs wasn't great, but there was a run there 15 years where there was we had players that, young players, veteran players, they were in those situations multiple times. They started to understand how we needed as a group to play, and how they needed individually to play, win more puck battles. And part of it, I guess, was the makeup of the general manager, trial and bringing people in, and they worked, and making changes. And part of it was just the evolution of your hockey team, and players learning how to play in tighter games and in harder games, and winning more puck battles, and winning 2-1. So I think that, how confident am I? I think that I think that last year, losing out to Chicago, it was very disappointing, but I'd also like to think it was educational for the manager, for the coach, for all the players in our organization. And we're now going to be in a division that it's going to be, I call it a playoff game every night. I mean, everybody in this division thinks that they can make the playoffs, and we're going to have to get off to a good start. You don't want to get behind. The beautiful thing is, if you do get behind, in terms of get off to a bad start, you're playing the same teams over and over again. So if you can put something together, you can start to pick up make up some ground in a hurry. So I think that the answer to your question is, we got to continue to be in those situations, and as a group, we got to dig in, and we've got to win more 50-50 battles. We got to win the low-scoring games. We got to find ways to protect leads and kill penalties, and all those things. And certainly, when you looked at that Chicago series, one game we're up 3-2 with less than 5 minutes to go, and I think we gave up 2 goals in the last minute to turn a 3-2 win into a 4-3 loss. And another game, game 4, thought we got off to a real slow start in the first period. We got behind. We played very good the last 40 minutes. But when you give veteran players and veteran teams, you give them the lead. So I think those are the things that you learn. Like, you got to be ready to play from minute 1 of game 1, and you can't, when you've got a lead, you got to know how to nurse it to the finish line and let the clock run off. And I think that you've got to be in those situations over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And the players and the team evolve and adapt and adjust where you become. That's why you don't win the Stanley Cup right off that. You got these teams, like, there's a process. There's a process. Certainly Tampa Bay would be a fabulous example for. They've been a cup contender for 6-7 years, and had many disappointments, and through obviously some great moves personnel-wise, but also through being in those situations multiple times, they found a way to win the Stanley Cup. And I think that so in our roster, it's a similar situation. We got to keep putting ourselves in those situations. We're going to have some disappointments, but you got to learn from those disappointments to be more prepared for the next game, the next challenge, the next playoff series, the next year. However you want, how big you want to look at it, or how small you want to look at it. But we got to put ourselves in those situations over and over and over and over again, and learn from it.
Great, thanks, Ken. Next question, Mark Spector, Sportsnet.
So
Go ahead,
to
Mark.
put a point on Reed's question, I think everyone talks about Stevie Yzerman and how he changed his game back in those Detroit years, right? He went from a guy that
Yep.
really embraced just what you described. Is that something that has to happen on this team during the regular season so they're ready for the playoffs? Is that something that starts in game 1, Ken?
I think so. I think, Mark, I would say to you, I thought, you've heard me say, I think we made progress last year. How much progress? But we made progress. the statistics say we made some progress. You know, we went from 27 points to 12th, and the goals against and the goals for. But we got to continue. We got to make more progress. But I think at the end of the day, the one area you got to, the teams that know how to check the best, keep the puck out of their net, ultimately over the long run, have more success. Doesn't mean it's the only way to success, but it's a big part of your success. So I thought we made really good progress last year. Certainly, you look at the penalty killing. Now, you have to do it again. The power play, we have to do it again. But I think that we're more of a veteran team. Even the players that have been here, they got another year under their belt. We had a massive disappointment in the play-in in losing to Chicago. We had way higher expectations than getting bounced right off the bat. And so it was a learning experience. You know, we've brought in guys like obviously Kyle Turris has been around the league, and I think of Ottawa going to Game 7 of the playoffs against Pittsburgh, but 3 years ago, and he was a key part of that Ottawa team, and he's a veteran guy. And Cahoon's a veteran guy, and we had Ennis, and we brought in Tyson Barrie, who's been around the league. So we're not counting on. And certainly I want the young people to push. I want the young people to push and that are in this organization. But we've got lots of veteran players, and so it's and what you're talking about, Steve Yzerman. It wasn't only Steve Yzerman. It was the Detroit Red Wings, and I can the Detroit Red Wings in 1992, 3, 4. We'd win 5-3 in the regular season, and come playoffs, we'd be broomed out in the first round, and those 5-3 regular season wins became 3-2 playoff losses because you can't score quite as, but you got to score. You need a power play, and certainly we've got some real positive assets part of our team. You think of the year that Leon had, and Connor McDavid and Nugent Hopkins, and certainly and Yamamoto would come in, and certainly you got to score goals, and that's part of the reason we went out and we signed Turris and Cahoon and re-signed Ennis and brought over Puljujarvi. We're trying to get more secondary scoring. You can't just count on 2 or 3 people to do it, because the other team is going to do everything they can in their power to I can't say stop them, but neutralize them to some degree. And it's a learning experience. So, we're bringing in veteran players. We're trying to get deeper. We're trying to create more offense from up and down our roster. But certainly the team commitment to defense, to keeping the puck out of your net, I think is a big component, is a big part of taking your team to another level and to another level and to another level. You got to get comfortable in 2-1 games. And certainly over this 56 game schedule, there's going to be, I would anticipate early on that there's going to be lots of it has the potential for some high scoring games, some rusty games, some 5-4, 6-5s. But I think as you start to go along, it's going to tighten up, and it's going to tighten up. And again, I get back to what I said to Reed. It's the more times we're in those games and those situations, we're going to learn how to, as a team, how to come up on the winning end more often than the losing end.
Great. Next question, Patrick Henry, Radio Canada. Go ahead, Patrick.
Again, one of the things the Eastern team doesn't like about the new division is the fact that they're going to have to travel as much as you do now. So what can you tell them about that? Do you feel like now it's more fair than it used to be? And regarding your team, have you made an estimate of what it's going to mean compared to the other years, the previous year, in terms of trip or time spent in a plane?
Well, first off, I just got a draft of our schedule here about an hour ago, and we're supposed to look at it. So it's not like I've had a bunch of time. I mean, I knew what division we were in, but I didn't know what the travel was going to look like. So I haven't had any time to really analyze the miles of how many miles we're doing now compared to the past. I would say, I've been around a long time. I was in Detroit when we were in the Western Conference, and there was lots and lots of travel. And then when Detroit was in the Eastern Conference, and the travel was greatly reduced. And then I went from Detroit to Edmonton, and certainly the travel last year in Edmonton was far greater than the travel that I had in Detroit when Detroit was in the Eastern Conference. Certainly, I would say to you, first off, having a 7-team Canadian division, and you got 3 teams way out west, and you got 3 teams way out east, and you got 1 in the middle, it's probably going to be pretty similar for everybody. So it's not like anyone's going to have an advantage or a disadvantage when it comes to travel. We're all going to have compacted schedules. Again, I've looked at our schedule here. We've got some stretches. We're playing a lot of games in a tight period of time, but lots of teams have that. So I would say to you, I think it's going to be exciting to be in an all-Canadian division. We play Calgary 10 times. We play Vancouver 10 times. I think we play all the other teams 9 times. And then 4 of those teams get to go to the playoffs and play another team a best of 7. So you could play somebody up to 17 times this year. So it's going to create, there's going to be some good rivalries built along the way. The more you play teams, then you get into a series that you create some animosity, and you some good, healthy energy that wanting to beat your opposition. So I think it's going to be great for fans, and it's going to be fun for the players.
Next question, Jim Matheson, Post Media. Go ahead, Jim.
Ken, question. Your size training camp, how big is that going to be?
Well, the rules are 36 skaters and unlimited goalies. We're probably, right now, I'm thinking we're going to bring 5 goalies. And then we're going to try to get as close to 36 as we can. I know that Coach Tippett wants to have, as we get into camp, he wants to have some games with no preseason games. He wants to have some games. So, you anticipate in camp, you're going to have, groin pulls. And I know that early on, there's probably a player or 2 that might not be available. I know Gaëtan Haas is an example. He played December the 14th, I believe, was his last game in the Swiss League. And there was a lot of people tested for COVID. So he needs to be in Switzerland till I think he flies over the 28th or 29th, and then he's got 8 days of quarantining when he gets here, so he won't be ready to go the first couple of days of training camp. I don't think he has COVID, but he's sort of close contact, and now he's obviously in the quarantine rules in Switzerland, and then the quarantine rules when he comes over here between the NHL and the NHLPA. So I think that we'd like to get as close as we can as to 36, because we're gonna, between injuries and we had a lot of people traveling here over the Christmas season coming into Edmonton. Hopefully we'll have good luck and nobody comes up with COVID, but, you got to be prepared that maybe you do. So we'll be as close to 36 skaters as we can. I can't tell you. I would anticipate we'll have 33 or 34 skaters for sure, and we might have up to 36 skaters.
Great. Thanks, Ken. Next question, Jack Michaels, 630 Chegg. Go ahead, Jack.
Ken, thanks for doing this. I had 2 questions, the first of which relates to what you talked about at the beginning, that taxi squad, and you mentioned uncharted waters. And I'm wondering, will it be intriguing for you and the other managers to see the value of a taxi squad? And it's something that I've often thought about, like, would the NHL ever consider an NFL model where you don't necessarily play games, but you see the value of being around the major league club and seeing exactly what their systems work out like? Is that something you've given much thought to in terms of balancing the taxi squad and actual games played?
That's a great question, Jack. I guess, my philosophy on young players, there's veteran players, and there's veteran minor leaguers, and then there's really good prospects, and then there's prospects, there's your NHL players. But, when it comes to young players developing, going from the draft table to playing regularly in the National Hockey League, my philosophy is based upon my 9 years in the American Hockey League as a player, in the Detroit Red Wing organization and the Hartford Whaler organization, 2 organizations that were in rebuild, and seeing players come up and down, and how many of them went up, lost their confidence, and they ended up to be, you know, in the bottom part of the roster, healthy stretches for long, and then come down. They were 20, 21, 22, and then going to work with Scotty Bowman, and watching how, you know, Scotty, when I was assistant manager, how he would acquire a 36-year-old, 35-year-old, you know, Igor Slava Fetisov out of the press box for a third-round draft pick, and what Slava Fetisov meant to the Detroit Red Wings versus a 20-year-old. And so my concern about a taxi squad is, you know, for young players, great to be on the taxi squad and you're around, but certainly on an everyday practice, you know, when you play today and tomorrow's off and you play the next day and the day's off, the NHL head coach's job is to make sure the 20 best players that are going to play, or the 20, maybe towards 21, 22, but they're getting all the practice time. There's two goalies, you know, there's one goalie in one net, Koskinen's one net, Smith's in the other net. The third goalie, he's going to come out and grab 15 minutes before practice. He's going to grab 15 minutes after practice. We've got to have our goalies sharp. We can't be rotating goalies in and out. So basically you're going to run your team like it's a two goalie system. That third guy is just going to grab 15 minutes here and 15 minutes there. I would anticipate it's hard to run a practice with, you know, running 6 lines and 10 defensemen and thinking that you're going to get everybody. He's going to reduce that down to 4 lines and 6 defensemen. So the taxi squad is great in terms of having, you know, players around and maybe getting some experience. But to be on a taxi squad for 4 months, and if you had it over an 82-game schedule, be on a taxi squad for 6 months, I'd rather see players play, especially young players, especially 20, 21, 22-year-old players play. I like them to play, and versus just being on a taxi squad. So I'm anxious to see how this works, Jack. Maybe I'll adjust my philosophy after watching this live for the next 4 months. So it's going to be very interesting for me personally.
And then purely from a personnel standpoint, taking out the experience and educational aspects of the Chicago loss, when you look at Cahoon, Turris, Puljujarvi, potentially, you know, putting guys like, you know, Kara, Chase on, you know, conceded regulars previous to this year, you know, more of fighting for spots. Is that a good thing? Do you feel better personnel-wise than you did on the last day of the postseason last year?
Jack, as a manager, I love competition. I love internal competition. I think it pushes people. You know, when you're in the lineup, if you don't get the job done, there's someone waiting to take your job. I think from an organization, I think that's a good thing. I don't like handing out jobs based upon potential. For the most part, I like competition. There are situations when you do have to give jobs because of potential. You know, high draft picks. They've done some wonderful things. You know, extraordinary things in college or Europe or junior. But I think at the end of the day, I think competition is a good thing. It's a healthy thing, and you know, certainly, you know, not only the players. You know, you look at Gaetan Haas and Nygaard, you know, they came over last year. Now they've got an idea what the NHL is about. We're hoping that they've taken they're a little more ready for what the NHL is about. You know, even though they were 26 years old, the NHL was an unknown to them and living it on an everyday basis. So certainly it's not only the players that we've brought in from the outside and added, but I think it's also some of the players on the, you know, Ethan Bear and Caleb Jones, the young players that they got to play in the National Hockey League last year, and Nygaard and Haas, and then certainly we've brought Puljujarvi and Cahoon and Ennis and brought Kyle Turris, and we've got some veterans. So I'm hoping that we're going to have more competition for jobs, and it's going to push our team to greater heights. That's the hope. That's the plan.
Great. Next question, Terry Jones. Go ahead, Terry.
Can we put a frame around this? We've all seen the Canadian division coming. The pressure, the excitement, the anticipation, the parity involved and everything. How do you look at your team going in? Is it strong enough? Is it deep enough? Is it mentally tough enough coming out of the playoffs and all that sort of thing? Just how do you see your team going in?
Jerry, I don't have answers for you. The beautiful thing is 56 games from now, some of those questions are going to be answered. And then if you're able to be one of the 4 teams standing, then it's going to be, are you good enough? Are you deep enough to beat somebody head on head over a 2-week period? So I think we're better. I think we're deeper. I think we're more prepared. I do know that we're in a really strong division. Actually, the NHL is really overall. I mean, for the most part, that it's strong. But there's probably one team in this. Ottawa was a team that was rebuilding. Well, they went out and made a deal for Murray and Dadonov, and they've added some real veteran players, and they're trying to obviously. Take their franchise and get it into the playoffs. So the questions that you answered, I'm anxious to watch. I feel good about the moves that we've made. We went into October the 9th knowing that we had a limited amount of cap space. I don't know, $7.5, $8 million, and we knew we wanted to do some things. And not only October the 9th, into the off season, obviously we signed Puljujärvi 2 years at just under at 1.2, and we got Turris at 1.6, and signed Kahun at a 975, and Ennis at $1 million. And, I re-signed, I re-signed Nygaard and Haas, took their cap number down a little bit. I know that I've got to get Ethan Bear signed. Certainly losing Clefbaum is a massive loss. We knew we needed to get another defenseman. I'm excited that we got to Tyson Barrie, an opportunity for him to come here, and he was a really good player in Colorado, and played good in Toronto, but obviously he hit the market, and we've got him. So I'm just as anxious as you are to watch our team play. I'm just as anxious as fans are to watch the Canadian division and watch those games on an every night basis, knowing that we're playing Calgary 10 times and Vancouver 10 times and Toronto 9 times and Montreal 9 times and Winnipeg 9 times and Ottawa 9 times. Those are going to be playoff games every night. So are we tough enough? Are we deep enough? Are we good enough? Can we check good enough? We're going to find out. We certainly feel good about the things that we've been able to do with our team over the last 18 months on and off the ice. I thought Dave Tippett got our team to compete on an every night basis last year, and nights that we lost, I thought most nights we competed to the finish, and so I thought our team was evolving. And then we obviously, the entire world got shut down on March the 15th thereabouts, and so I'm anxious to see how we perform. I believe that we're better. I believe that we're deeper. I believe that the experience of the Chicago series and for some of those players that have been here, when the Anaheim series and the San Jose series, the more times you can be in those games. And I think when I said, Terry, on May the 6th, when I took the job, what I wanted was last year in March to control our own fate. And in the month of March, those are playoff games. You got to win games and you got to play your way into the playoffs. And the more times you can be in that situation, you get better, you evolve. So I'm anxious. I'm just as anxious as you are to see how we perform, but I believe we're better. I believe we're more prepared. We do have lots of question marks, but I think lots of teams have lots of question marks this time of the year. And I think the competition up front that Reed had asked me about, I'm hoping is going to help us be better prepared and deeper. And but I'm anxious to watch just like you are. But I feel good about our team, and I'm anxious to get to training camp.
Next question, Quinn Phillips, Global. Go ahead, Quinn.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, Ken. Just want to talk about Philip Broberg. He's playing in his third World Junior Tournament, captain of Team Sweden. What do you want to see from him at this tournament?
Well, I was happy to see he got named captain recently. I mean, obviously the coaching staff there must feel that he's got the necessary ingredients to put the C on his jersey. I thought last year at the World Junior, he and Bjorn Fort was their kind of shutdown pair. They played against the other team's best offensive lines on most of the time. They were on the ice on penalty kill situations. You draft young defensemen based upon potential to produce offense. And then once you draft them, you grade them on and judge them on how they can defend. So last year, certainly, I thought he did a real good job in playing a defensive role. I don't know what the plans are for the coach, but certainly I look at important situations. When the game's going on and there's key times, you look at the scoreboard. Hard to judge players if you win 7-1 or you lose 7-1, but it's a 3-2 game and it's two good teams playing. And I watched the coach to see how he uses certain players and what situations he uses players. So obviously by Broberg being named captain this week, I would anticipate that he's going to be playing in some key situations. Is he going to be in the power play? Is he going to be in penalty killing? Is he going to be in the ice late in the game protecting a 1-goal lead? The key situations in the game. That's when the coach uses players to win those situations. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for him to play in key situations. I'm looking to see how the coach is going to use him on the power play, on the penalty killing. He doesn't necessarily have to be in the power play, the penalty killing, but you'd like to see him on one of those two units, and what kind of an impact he can have for his team over the course of the tournament.
Next question, Jean-Francois Chamon, Journal de Montréal. Go ahead.
Hi, Ken. Thanks for taking the time. We're talking a lot about the Canadian division, but right now there's 3 provinces where we don't know if the teams will be able to be playing in their own building. We're talking about British Columbia, Quebec, and Ontario. So it's 4 teams out of 7 where there's some unknown. Are you confident we're going to get a deal done with the health authorities and we'll be able to play everywhere in Canada?
Well, that's above my pay grade, Jean. Obviously, that's between Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, and with the union and all the health officials from those 3 provinces. So. I got a tentative schedule today. That's it's an all Canadian schedule. Whether we're all in our own markets or where they end up, I don't know. My job as the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers is to make sure the Edmonton Oilers are ready to go on on January the 3rd with training camp, making the moves in the off season. And we're going to adjust as we have to. But I'm certainly anticipating that we're going to be playing. In Edmonton. The Edmonton Oilers, I'm anticipating we're going to be in Edmonton until I'm told otherwise.
Great. Next question, Jason Gregor, TSN 1260.
We're here, 2 weeks away, I guess, from training camp. Obviously, you want Ethan Bear in camp. Can you update us on the contract negotiations? How close do you think you are? Are you concerned at all?
Well, I'm always concerned until you get a deal done. We've had talks. I've had, Bill Scott has a real relationship with Ethan's agent, so I've got Bill Scott really being the point person. We've had a number of talks. We got to get at it now. We got to get at it. Certainly. Ethan's not in Edmonton, is my understanding, and I'm not sure where. I think he was outside of Edmonton. So certainly, in order to be ready for day 1 of camp on the ice, you got to be in Edmonton on the 26th of December, and then you got the 8 days of quarantining. Day 1, 3, 5, and 7. You got to get tested, and 4 negative tests in day 8. So if you go from December 26th and 8 days is around January the 3rd. So certainly got to try to find a solution to get him. I would like him in camp. I'd like him signed. I'm sure the player and the agent wants the same thing. We've got to find something that, I say the same thing, Jason. Got to find something that works for the player and works for the club. And I'm prepared to do you know, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. We haven't talked anything other than 1 or 2 or 3 years. So hopefully we can find a solution, get him into camp. He's an important part of our team.